A flight crew holds all the power at the gate. They can deny you boarding for any reason, your shirt, your tone, or just the way you look. But what happens when the crew, led by a smug gate agent named Karen Miller, decides to wield that power against the wrong couple? Marcus and Serena Thorne, a black couple flying first class, were told they were disruptive and a threat. They were banned from their flight, humiliated in front of the entire terminal. But as security arrived to escort them out, the crew's triumphant smirks vanished. Because Marcus and Serena weren't just passengers, they were Federal Aviation Administration investigators, and they didn't just have boarding passes. They had badges that were about to bring the entire airport to a screeching halt. The hum of Chicago O'Hare International Airport was a familiar kind of chaos. It was the sound of rolling suitcases, muffled announcements, and the distant, tinny loop of safety instructions from a demo television. For Marcus and Serena Thorne, it was supposed to be the sound of an escape. Marcus, a man whose calmness was often mistaken for indifference, adjusted the strap of his leather duffel bag. He was tall, wearing a crisp, dark grey travel blazer that spoke of effortless professionalism. Beside him, Serena, sharp and observant, with eyes that missed nothing, checked her phone for the 5th time. "Gate C-12, flight 7:15. On time," she murmured, a small smile finally touching her lips. "Miami, I can't believe it." "It's been 2 years, Rena," Marcus replied, his voice a low, smooth baritone. 2 years of reports, investigations, and bad coffee. I think we've earned a week of doing nothing." They were investigators for the Federal Aviation Administration, a fact they rarely, if ever, disclosed. Their jobs were high stress, demanding, and often thankless. Marcus was a senior safety inspector, the man who reviewed black boxes and maintenance logs. Serena worked in the Office of Civil Rights and Compliance, dealing with the human element, discrimination complaints, crew misconduct, and accessibility violations. They lived and breathed the complex, invisible machinery that kept America flying. But today, they were just Marcus and Serena, a couple in their late 30s, finally taking their long overdue vacation. They had saved for this. First-class tickets on Global Wing Airlines, a premium carrier. It was an indulgence, a way to definitively shed their work personas and step into pure relaxation. They approached the sprawling gate area of C-12. The digital screen showed Flight 7:15 to Miami, boarding. The priority line for first class and Diamond members was a short, burgundy-carpeted lane. They stepped into it. The gate agent at the main podium, a woman in her 50s with a tight blonde perm and a name badge that read Karen Miller, looked up. Her eyes scanned them, flickered over their expensive luggage, and landed on their faces. Her smile, which had been bright for the white businessman in front of them, tightened into a thin line of professional courtesy. "Next," she called, her voice sharp. Marcus and Serena stepped forward. "Good morning," Marcus said, handing her their passports and boarding passes. Karen Miller took them without a word. Her fingers tapped on the keyboard. Tap, 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 tap. The silence stretched. She huffed, her eyes glued to the screen. "Is there a problem?" Serena asked politely. "I'm not finding you," Karen said, not looking up. She tapped again, harder this time. "This reservation code isn't pulling up." Marcus felt the familiar, cold prickle on the back of his neck. He kept his voice perfectly level. "That's the correct code. We checked in this morning. Here's the confirmation on the app." He held out his phone. Karen ignored the phone. "Sir, I need to use my system. Your app doesn't matter here." She sighed dramatically, as if they were a monumental inconvenience. "I'll have to rescan the passports." She snatched Serena's passport and ran it through the scanner. "Beep." She ran Marcus's. "Beep." "Ah," she said, her voice dripping with a false, saccharine brightness. "There you are. It seems you were in the wrong line." Serena frowned. I'm sorry? This is the first-class line, isn't it? Yes, Karen said, her smile never reaching her eyes. But your tickets were flagged for a security check. You should have been over there. She gestured vaguely to the general boarding crush. Marcus knew FAA ticketing protocols. A random SSSSS security flag would have been on their boarding pass. It wasn't. There was no security flag on our passes, Marcus stated simply. Karen's eyes narrowed. Well, the system flagged it, but it seems to have cleared. She printed out 2 new flimsy boarding passes and slapped them on the counter. You're in 1A and 1B. You'll have to board with Group 3. The humiliation was a hot, sudden flash. We paid for first class, Serena said, her voice dropping a notch. First-class boards with priority. And I am telling you, Karen said, leaning forward, her voice low and conspiratorial, that due to the security flag you triggered, you've lost your priority position. If you want to get on this flight, you'll wait for Group 3. It was a blatant lie. It was a power play. It was, as Serena knew from the hundreds of case files she'd read, a classic example of soft discrimination, using non-existent rules to punish a passenger the crew member had decided they didn't like. That's not standard procedure, Marcus said, his voice still calm, but now with a new, hard edge. Are you an airline employee, sir? Karen snapped. Do you know Global Wing's internal policies? No? Then I suggest you step aside and let me board the other passengers. Behind them, a white couple, in jeans and t-shirts, also in the priority line, were shuffling impatiently. Karen beamed at them. So sorry for the delay. Go right ahead. She scanned their tickets, and they walked past, casting a nervous glance at Marcus and Serena. Defeated for the moment, they stepped aside. They watched as the rest of the priority passengers boarded. Then Group 1. Then Group 2. The area around the gate began to empty. Marcus and Serena stood alone, 2 first-class passengers treated like pariahs. This is unbelievable, Serena whispered, her knuckles white as she gripped her carry-on. It's a test, Rena, Marcus murmured back. She's trying to get a reaction. Don't give it to her. We get on the plane, we file the complaint later. We are not missing this vacation. Finally, Karen called. Group 3. Military and families traveling with small children. She looked directly at Marcus and Serena. You can go now. Without a word, they walked to the podium. Karen snatched their new passes, scanned them with exaggerated force, and handed them back. Have a nice flight, she said, her voice a weapon. They walked down the jet bridge, the antiseptic smell of the tunnel mixing with the rising scent of jet fuel. The humiliation burned. They were the first ones from Group 3, but the last ones in first class. As they stepped onto the aircraft, they were met by a flight attendant standing in the galley. He was a young man, sharp-featured, with a smug set to his mouth. His name tag read, Todd. Welcome, he said, his eyes raking over them. He'd clearly been briefed. Good morning, Serena said, forcing a smile as she moved to her right, toward her seat. 1B. Whoa, hang on, Todd said, putting a hand up, blocking her path. That bag's not going to fit. Serena looked at her carry-on. It was a standard, high-end, 22-inch roller, the same bag she'd taken on hundreds of flights. It's a standard carry-on, she said. It looks oversized to me, Todd said, crossing his arms. The bins in this cabin are small. You'll have to check it. We're in first class, Marcus said, stepping up behind Serena. The bins are larger here than in coach. It will fit. Sir, I'm the one who works here, Todd replied, his voice insolent. I know my bins. It's too big. You're holding up the line. We have to check it. Just then, a white man from Group 3, holding a duffel bag that was visibly larger and more overstuffed than Serena's, pushed past them. Excuse me, he mumbled. Todd smiled and nodded. Right this way, sir. Bin space right above row 2. Serena's professionalism snapped. You're joking, she said, her voice no longer polite. You just let that man on with a bag twice the size of mine, but mine is the problem? Todd's face darkened. Ma'am, if you're going to be aggressive, I'm going to have to ask you to deplane. Aggressive? Serena's voice rose and she couldn't stop it. We were forced to board last, and now you're singling out my bag? This is harassment. That's it, Todd snapped. He leaned back and called out, Karen, we've got a situation. They're being disruptive. It had been a trap, a perfectly laid, 2-part trap. From the podium to the plane, they had been targeted, and now they had taken the bait. The word disruptive echoed in the narrow confines of the jet bridge. It was the magic word, the shut-it-all-down card that crew members could play. Instantly, the flow of passengers behind them stopped. Karen Miller appeared at the aircraft door, her face a mask of triumphant concern. Is everything all right, Todd? No, Todd said, pointing at Serena. This woman became aggressive when I informed her she'd have to check her oversized bag. Her husband here, he gestured to Marcus, was backing her up, getting in my face. They're causing a scene and holding up boarding. Marcus hadn't moved an inch. He hadn't raised his voice. That is a complete misrepresentation, Marcus said, his voice low and dangerous. Your flight attendant singled out my wife's standard-sized bag after allowing a larger bag on board. We questioned the policy. We were not aggressive. See? Karen said to Todd, loud enough for the passengers on the jet bridge to hear. I told you they were trouble. They were like this at the podium. Aggressive. Argumentative. She turned her gaze to Marcus and Serena, her eyes cold. I'm going to have to ask you to step off the aircraft. We're denying you boarding. The words hung in the air. Denied boarding. On what grounds? Serena demanded. On the grounds that I asked a question? On the grounds that you don't like us? On the grounds that you are interfering with a flight crew, Karen said, her voice ringing with authority. That is a federal offense. You are being disruptive. You are a safety risk, and we are not comfortable having you on this flight. Now, please, step back onto the jet bridge. A safety risk? Marcus repeated, incredulous. We are standing in the galley. Your attitude is a safety risk, sir. We don't know what you'll do once we're in the air. Todd felt threatened. I feel threatened. It was a perfectly rehearsed script. They were using the buzzwords that would protect them from any lawsuit. Threatened. Safety. Interference. We are not leaving, Serena said, planting her feet. We have paid for these tickets. We have done nothing wrong. If you refuse to deplane, we will have the police remove you, Karen said, her voice flat. She reached for the interphone on the wall. I'm calling the captain. A moment later, a tall man with silver hair and an authoritative air pushed through the curtain from the cockpit. He had 4 stripes on his epaulets. Captain John McGregor. He looked at Karen, then at Todd, then his eyes settled on Marcus and Serena. It was not a look of inquiry, it was a look of judgment. What's the problem here? He boomed. Captain, Karen said, these 2 passengers, 1A and 1B, were argumentative and aggressive at the gate. I had to board them last. Now they've become belligerent with Todd, refusing to check a bag and accusing the crew of harassment. They're holding up the entire flight. Captain McGregor looked at Marcus. Is this true? You're harassing my crew. Captain, Marcus said, choosing his words with extreme care. I assure you, no one has been harassed. We are first-class passengers. My wife was told her standard carry-on was oversized after another passenger with a larger bag was allowed to board. When we pointed out this discrepancy, your crew accused us of being aggressive and has now banned us from the flight. McGregor listened, his expression unchanged. He clearly hadn't heard a word. He'd only heard, Dispute. Son, he said, his voice a condescending drawl. My crew has a plane to get in the air. I don't have time for this. If my lead flight attendant and my gate agent both say you're being disruptive, then you're being disruptive. I'm not having a debate. I trust my crew. You're off this flight. End of discussion. The finality of it was like a slap. There was no appeal, no trial, just the absolute, unquestioned power of the flight crew. So you're not even going to listen to us? Serena asked, her voice trembling with a mixture of rage and disbelief. You're just going to take their word for it? Do you see us? Do you see them? Does this seem right to you? What I see, McGregor said, stepping closer, are two people who are delaying a flight with 180 passengers. What I see is my crew, who I've flown with for years, telling me there's a problem. I'm making a command decision. Get off my plane. Now. He turned to Karen. Call security. Have them escorted from the gate. He then turned and disappeared back into the cockpit. The curtain swished shut. The passengers on the jet bridge, who had been watching the entire exchange, began to whisper. Their faces were a mixture of annoyance at the delay, pity, and simple, rubbernecking curiosity. Marcus and Serena were forced to turn around and perform the walk of shame. They walked back up the jet bridge, past the line of passengers, and into the gate area. Karen Miller followed them, her shoulders back, victorious. Todd Donovan stood at the plane door, arms crossed, a smirk on his face. You'll need to wait here for security, Karen announced, loud enough for the entire gate to hear. We'll have your checked bags pulled. They'll be at baggage claim. Eventually. They stood by the podium, humiliated. The other passengers from Group 3 began to file past them, boarding the plane, none of them making eye contact. Marcus and Serena were an island of shame. She's going to get away with this, Serena whispered to Marcus, her eyes stinging. They're all going to get away with it. No, Marcus said, his voice quiet, almost unnervingly calm. No, they're not. He pulled out his phone. What are you doing? Calling the airline? No, Marcus said. I'm making a note of their names. Karen Miller, Todd Donovan, Captain John McGregor, Flight 715. I want every detail, every single word they said. Karen saw him on his phone. And no recording, she shouted. It is illegal to record airline personnel in the sterile area. Another lie. It wasn't illegal, just against airline policy. But Marcus wasn't recording. He was taking notes. I'm not recording you, Ms. Miller, he said. That's Agent Miller to you, she snapped, pointing to her gate agent title. Noted, Marcus said, his thumb tapping on the screen. A few minutes later, 2 airport police officers arrived. They were big men, their faces neutral, their hands resting on their belts. These are the 2, Karen said, pointing. They were denied boarding for interfering with the crew. Now they're refusing to leave the gate area. I need them escorted out of the terminal. Honestly, officer, given their aggression, I'm worried they might be a threat. This was the final escalation. The threat word. Now it was a security issue, not a customer service one. The officers turned to Marcus and Serena. Sir, ma'am, the first officer, Officer Hayes, said, you've been denied boarding. You need to come with us. Marcus looked at the officer. He looked at Serena. He saw the tears of frustration in her eyes. He looked at Karen Miller, who was beaming with smug satisfaction. He looked at the junior gate agent at the next podium, a young woman named Chloe, who was watching the whole thing, her face pale with what looked like fear and disgust. This has gone far enough, Marcus said, his voice resonating with a new, cold authority. He sighed, as if a great weight had been settled. Officer Hayes, he said, we are not a threat. We will not be leaving the terminal, but you need to secure this gate. Karen Miller let out a bark of a laugh. Secure the gate? You're the one being—" Marcus cut her off, not with volume, but with a profound, sudden shift in presence. He was no longer a passenger. He was an investigator. He reached into the breast pocket of his blazer. Serena, seeing his move, reached into her purse. "Officers," Marcus said, his voice projecting through the gate. "My name is Senior Investigator Marcus Thorne, Federal Aviation Administration, badge number 774. He flipped open his wallet, revealing not a driver's license, but a gold shield and a federal ID. Serena did the same. "Special Agent Serena Thorne, FAA Office of Civil Rights and Compliance, badge 921. The terminal didn't literally freeze, but the world at gate C12 did. The sound of Karen Miller's choked gasp was the only sound in the immediate vicinity. The two airport police officers, Hayes and his partner, visibly recoiled. Their hands, which had been resting casually on their belts, now looked frozen in place. Officer Hayes, who had been speaking, looked as if he'd been slapped. His eyes darted from the gold badge in Marcus's hand to Marcus's face, then to the identical, formidable badge in Serena's. "Ma'am." "Sir," Officer Hayes stammered, his entire demeanor shifting from command to confusion. "We—" "It's all right, officer," Serena said, her voice sharp and clear, all trace of the disruptive passenger gone, replaced by the steely edge of a federal agent. "You are not the subjects of this investigation. You are here as security, and we now require you to secure this area." Karen Miller's face, moments before flushed with victory, had gone a blotchy, pale white. That's not real," she whispered, her eyes wide. "You can't. You bought those online. That's a federal crime. Impersonating a federal officer." Marcus leveled a gaze at her that could have frozen water. "Ms. Miller, I assure you, the only federal crimes committed at this gate today were not by us." He turned back to Officer Hayes. "Officer, I am officially declaring this gate an active investigation site. No one leaves. Not Ms. Miller. Not her colleague." He pointed to the junior agent, Chloe, who looked like she might faint. "And not the flight crew. That aircraft," he said, pointing to the plane, "is grounded. It is not taking off. It is now evidence." You can't ground a plane!" Karen shrieked, finding her voice. It was high-pitched, hysterical. "We have 180 people on board. We have a schedule. I'll be fired." "You should have thought of that," Serena said, her voice flat. "Before you and Mr. Donovan decided to play power games with passengers, before you, Captain McGregor, decided to trust your crew, without a single verification. The passengers still waiting to board, the ones in Group 4 and 5, were watching, their phones suddenly, discreetly, rising up to record. The whispers were no longer about the disruptive couple. They were about the FAA. "Officer," Marcus commanded, "get on your radio. I need the Global Wing Airlines station manager for O'Hare. I need the head of airline security. And I need a direct line to the FAA's Great Lakes Regional Administrator. Tell them Investigator Thorne is on site at C12 and has initiated a 49 U.S. code investigation." Officer Hayes fumbled for his radio, his hands shaking slightly. "Copy that, sir." He turned away, his voice urgent and hushed as he spoke into his shoulder mic. The junior agent, Chloe, burst into tears. I'm sorry. Marcus looked at her, his expression softening for a fraction of a second. "You're all right, Miss Jenkins. Chloe Jenkins," she wept. I saw what she did. At the podium. She flagged you for no reason. She called Todd on the jet bridge phone. I heard her. She said, 'Got 2 problem children for 1A and 1B. Make sure you check their bags.'" Karen Miller's head whipped around. "You traitorous little—" "Ms. Miller, you will be silent," Serena snapped, and the authority in her voice made Karen physically flinch. "You will not intimidate a material witness." From the jet bridge, The face of Todd Donovan peered out. He had heard the commotion. He saw the police. He saw Karen's white face. And he saw Marcus and Serena, no longer passengers, but standing tall, holding badges. His smug smirk evaporated. He took an instinctive step back, disappearing into the aircraft. "Officer," Marcus said to the second policeman, "go to the door of that aircraft. Do not let anyone off, especially not the lead flight attendant or the pilots. They are to remain on the flight deck." The officer nodded and jogged down the jet bridge. The gate was now in chaos. The passengers for Flight 715 were locked in. The passengers for Flight 715 were locked out. The news was spreading. A gate agent at C-14 was craning his neck. "What's going on with Global Wing? Did someone say FAA?" Within 3 minutes, a lifetime in airport time, a man in a sharp suit was sprinting down the concourse, his tie flapping over his shoulder. He was followed by 2 more airport police and a woman in a Global Wing corporate uniform. The man skidded to a halt, his chest heaving. "I'm David Chen, the station manager. I was told there was a security threat, a grounding." Marcus and Serena, in unison, presented their credentials again. David Chen's face, already flushed from running, lost all its color. He looked like he had seen a ghost. Of all the nightmares a station manager can have, a fire, a security breach, a computer failure, this was the worst. This was the FAA on site, declaring war. "Mr. Chen," Marcus said, "I am Investigator Thorne. This is Special Agent Thorne. As of 5 minutes ago, your gate agent, Ms. Karen Miller, and your flight attendant, Mr. Todd Donovan, with the full backing of your pilot in command, Captain John McGregor, unlawfully denied boarding to 2 passengers, based on what we believe to be discriminatory profiling." But, Chen stammered. "The crew reported disruptive passengers, interference." "The disruptive passengers were us, Mr. Chen," Serena said, her voice cutting through his panic. "And we are now, as of this moment, federal agents who have been interfered with in the conduct of our duties we were on, as we are returning from a compliance conference. Your crew, sir, has just committed a felony. They have violated 49 U.S. Code, paragraph 4127, and my office," she tapped her badge, "will be handling the civil rights component." David Chen looked at Karen Miller. The hatred and terror in his eyes were profound. She wasn't just an employee who had made a mistake. She was the person who had just potentially cost the airline millions of dollars and brought a federal investigation crashing down on his terminal. "Karen," he whispered, "what did you do?" Karen was trembling, her false bravado completely shattered. I was following policy. They looked..." She couldn't finish. "They looked like what, Karen?" The unsaid word hung in the air. "Mr. Chen," Marcus said, "you have a choice. You can cooperate fully, or you can join your crew as a subject of this investigation for enabling this behavior. We need a secure office. We need all video footage from this gate, from the podium, and from the jet bridge, within the hour, and you will cancel this flight." "Cancel?" Chen balked. "I can't just... the passengers." "You have 180 passengers on that plane," Serena said, "who are now witnesses to a federal crime. That flight is not going to Miami. It is going nowhere. You will deplane every single passenger. You will arrange for their rebooking and accommodation. That is your problem." "Our problem," she said, gesturing to Karen, "is securing the integrity of this investigation." "And Mr. Chen," Marcus added, as a final, crushing blow, "get Captain McGregor off that flight deck, get him in your office, and tell him to bring his license. He's going to need it." The passengers of Flight 715 were deplaned. The announcement from David Chen, his voice cracking over the PA system, was a masterpiece of corporate understatement. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to an unforeseen security and crew availability issue, Flight 715 to Miami has been cancelled." The resulting explosion of anger and frustration from 180 people was immediate, but it was directed at the airline, not at Marcus and Serena, who were now being ushered by a shell-shocked David Chen into the Global Wing Station office, a glass-walled room behind the C-12 podium. Karen Miller and the junior agent, Chloe, were brought in as well. Officer Hayes stood guard at the door. The atmosphere inside was icy. "Ms. Miller," Marcus began, his voice devoid of any emotion. He and Serena were seated at one side of a conference table. Karen was opposite them, looking small and withered. Chloe sat in the corner, tissues balled in her hand. "Please walk us through the events of this morning, starting from when my wife and I approached your podium." Karen stammered. I just followed procedure. The system flagged them." "The system," Serena interjected. "Or you. We've already pulled the PNR, Ms. Miller." She gestured to her laptop, which was now open. "David, you gave us your terminal access, thank you." She tapped a few keys. "Here it is. Passenger name record for Thorne, M, and Thorne, S. Confirmed first class. No SSSS flag. No security hold. No ticketing issue. You lied." Karen's face crumpled. "No, I must have misread it. It's busy. I make mistakes." "You didn't misread anything," Serena countered. "You looked at us, decided we didn't belong, and created a problem. You then printed new boarding passes, deliberately removing our priority status. Why?" It was a late check-in," Karen stammered, grasping at straws. "We checked in 24 hours ago, Karen," Marcus said. "We're looking at the time stamp. 10:45 a.m. yesterday. Stop lying." And then, Marcus continued, his voice a relentless, calm hammer. "You called your colleague Mr. Donovan on the jet bridge." "No," Karen cried. At that moment, Chloe spoke up from the corner, her voice trembling but clear. "Yes, she did. I heard it. I was at the C-14 podium getting a printout. The jet bridge phone is right there. I heard her say, 'Todd, Karen, I've got 2 problem children from first class, 1A and 1B. They're being very aggressive. Make sure you find a problem with their bags. We don't want them on this flight.'" Karen Miller stared at Chloe, her mouth open, a look of pure, unadulterated hatred on her face. You're making that up." "Am I?" Chloe said, gaining strength. "You've done this before, Karen. Last week, with the family from the Middle East. You lost their seat assignments. And the month before, with the man in the wheelchair, you said he was too late for pre-boarding, even though he was here an hour early." "This is a pattern of behavior, Miss Miller," Serena said, typing furiously. "This isn't a mistake. This is malice. This is discrimination." "You can't prove that," Karen shrieked. "I don't need to prove it in this room," Serena said. "You're going to prove it for me under oath. But what we can prove right now is that you conspired with another crew member to deny boarding to a passenger under false pretenses. That's a direct violation of Global Wing's own contract of carriage. And when you did it to us," she tapped her badge on the table, "it became interference with a federal agent." The door opened. Officer Hayes leaned in. "Mr. Chen, Mr. Donovan is here." Todd Donovan walked in. He had lost all of his earlier bravado. He was pale and sweating through his uniform. He looked at Karen, then at Marcus and Serena, and his eyes were wide with terror. "Mr. Donovan," Marcus said, "please have a seat. We were just discussing your phone call with Ms. Miller." Todd's eyes darted to Karen. He saw her face, he saw Chloe, and he knew the game was up. He wasn't going to fall on his sword for Karen Miller. "She called me," he said, his voice a weak whisper. She told me they were being difficult, and that I should check their bags. She said they were probably non-revs who got a lucky upgrade and didn't know the rules." Non-revenue passengers, Serena clarified. Airline employees or family flying for free. You assumed we were employees, and you decided to teach us a lesson. I was just following her lead, Todd pleaded. She's the lead agent. I thought they were a real problem. So you decided to create a problem, Marcus said. You targeted my wife's bag, which you knew was compliant. It looked big, Todd insisted weakly. It didn't, Marcus said. And you proved that when you let a man with a visibly larger duffel bag walk right past you. We have his name, too. Mr. Henderson, seat 2C. We'll be deposing him as well. Todd's face was ashen. He had been caught, red-handed, by the two people in the world he should never have crossed. You conspired, Mr. Donovan, Serena said. You and Ms. Miller worked together to have us removed. You lied. You claimed we were aggressive and a threat. Do you have any idea the seriousness of that allegation? I'm sorry, Todd whimpered. You're not sorry, Marcus said. You're caught. David Chen, who had been watching this all unfold, finally spoke. His voice was shaking with rage. Karen, Todd, both of you, clock out. You are on indefinite, unpaid administrative leave. Get your badges. Hand them to me. Now. Karen Miller looked like she was going to be sick. David, please. It was a misunderstanding. I've been here 20 years. And in 20 minutes, you've undone 20 years, Chen spat. You've grounded a flight. You've brought the FAA down on my entire hub. You are done. Give me your badge. Sobbing, Karen unclipped her Global Wing ID and slid it across the table. Todd did the same, his hands shaking so badly he could barely unclip it. Get out, Chen ordered. Be escorted by security. As the two officers led a sobbing Karen and a ghost-white Todd out of the office, the door opened one more time. In stepped Captain John McGregor. He was no longer the arrogant, booming commander. His hat was in his hand. His face was grey. Mr. Chen, he said, his voice gravelly. Investigators. Captain, Marcus said, motioning to the seat. Please. Sit down. McGregor sat. He placed his pilot's license on the table. You know why you're here, Captain, Serena said. I believe I have an idea, McGregor said. I'm told the passengers I removed were you. That's the least of your problems, Captain, Marcus said. The issue isn't who we are. The issue is what you did. You, as pilot in command, have the absolute authority to remove a passenger. That authority is derived from 49 U.S. Code, Paragraph 44-902. But it comes with an absolute, non-negotiable responsibility to make a decision based on safety. You didn't do that. My crew reported a threat, McGregor argued, a flash of his old self returning. I have to trust them. You have to verify, Serena shot back. You didn't ask us a single question. You didn't assess the situation. You came out, listened to a 30-second hearsay report from a gate agent, and issued a command decision. You ejected 2 first-class passengers based on 0 first-hand evidence. You allowed your crew to weaponize the disruptive label. What if they had been a threat? McGregor said. And what if, Captain? Marcus leaned forward. They were a black couple who just wanted to go on vacation. You didn't see a threat. You saw an inconvenience that your crew wanted gone. And you complied. You failed, Captain. You failed in your primary duty. McGregor's face went rigid. I have a 30-year unblemished record. You had a 30-year unblemished record, Marcus corrected him. As of this morning, that record is very much blemished. Special Agent Thorne and I are filing a formal complaint against your license. We are recommending an immediate review of your command authority. The colour drained from McGregor's face. A review wasn't a suspension. It was the potential end of his career. It meant simulators, psychological evaluations, and a panel of FAA reviewers picking apart every decision he'd ever made. You're trying to take my wings?" he whispered, horrified. "No, Captain," Serena said, her voice soft but unforgiving. "You gave them away. You gave them to Karen Miller and Todd Donovan when you let them make your decision for you." McGregor stared at his license on the table. The man who, an hour ago, had been a god in his metal tube was now a broken employee. "Mr. Chen," Marcus said, "the captain is grounded, effective immediately. He will not be flying any aircraft until our investigation is complete." David Chen just nodded, his eyes closed. "Understood, Investigator Thorne." The karma was not a lightning bolt. It was a cold, systematic, and perfect dismantling. The fallout was not contained to Gate C-12. It wasn't even contained to O'Hare. By the time Marcus and Serena were finishing their preliminary interviews, the news had hit the Global Wing Airlines corporate headquarters in Atlanta like a missile. "What do you mean 2 FAA agents were banned from a flight?" bellowed a man named Frank Harrison, the executive vice president of in-flight operations. The call from David Chen had sent the entire 30th floor into a 5-alarm fire drill. "Frank, they're from the Civil Rights Office," Chen explained, his voice hushed. "And the other is a senior safety inspector. They've grounded the 715. They've taken badges. They're interviewing the captain right now." Harrison's blood ran cold. This wasn't a standard passenger complaint that could be solved with 10,000 frequent flyer miles. This was an existential threat. The FAA didn't just fine you. They could pull your operating certificate. "Get them whatever they want," Harrison ordered. "Food, drink, a private jet. I want them to know this is not who we are. This is a rogue employee incident." "I think it's too late for that, Frank," Chen said. They're very professional, and they're very angry. They're not passengers anymore. They're investigators. Get me on the phone with them. Now." Back in the station office, Marcus's phone buzzed. It was a number he didn't recognize. He let it go to voicemail. A moment later, David Chen's phone rang. "Yes, Mr. Harrison. Yes. They are right here." He held the phone out to Marcus. "It's our EVP of Operations." Marcus looked at the phone, then at Chen. "Mr. Chen, we are not conducting this investigation over the phone with your corporate office. You can inform Mr. Harrison that we will be in touch through official channels. Our regional administrator is already drafting a formal notice of investigation." Chen winced and relayed the message. The faint, apoplectic shouting on the other end was audible even from a few feet away. "We are, however," Serena added, "still passengers who have had our vacation ruined. Our luggage is still on that aircraft, which is now a crime scene. We will need our bags, and we will need rebooking." "Of course, absolutely," Chen said, relieved to have a simple, tangible task. "We will book you on the very next flight. Any airline. Your choice. On us. We'll get you a private car to the new terminal. We will be flying American," Serena said. "Their next flight to Miami leaves from Terminal 3 in 2 hours, and we will require a full, cash refund for our original Global Wing tickets, not vouchers. A refund." "Done. Done. Anything," Chen promised. While Chen scrambled to arrange the logistics, Marcus and Serena finished their report. They formally took Chloe Jenkins's statement, flagging her as a cooperative witness. They catalogued the names of the flight crew, the passengers they'd identified, and the 2 airport police officers. They confiscated the gate's login sheets and secured the promise from Chen that all video footage would be transferred to a secure FAA drive within the hour. An hour later, Marcus and Serena, their faces grim, walked out of the station office. Their carry-on bags, including Serena's oversized one, were in hand. A Global Wing manager, looking terrified, was waiting to personally escort them to Terminal 3. As they walked through the concourse, the passengers from Flight 715 were still clustered around Gate C12, shouting at the new, beleaguered gate agents who were trying to rebook them. The word had spread. "That's them," a man pointed. "That's the couple." "Are you really the FAA?" a woman called out. Marcus and Serena didn't look back. They walked with purpose, their vacation ruined, but their work just beginning. As they rode the airport tram to Terminal 3, Serena finally let out a long, shuddering breath. She leaned her head on Marcus's shoulder. "Some vacation," she murmured. "We'll get there, Rena," he said, putting his arm around her. "But this was important. That woman, Karen, she's been doing this for years. You heard Chloe. Today it just stopped." "And the captain," Serena said, her voice hard. "He's the one I can't forgive. The I trust my crew arrogance. He didn't even look at us. He just saw a problem to be erased." "His trust just cost him his career," Marcus said, "and it's going to cost Global Wing millions." They arrived at the American Airlines gate, were immediately pre-boarded, this time without incident, and settled into their new first-class seats. As the plane took off, finally lifting them out of Chicago, Serena looked down at the sprawling grid of the city. She knew that back at O'Hare, a bomb had gone off, and the shrapnel was just beginning to land. The investigation was swift and brutal. The FAA, as an organization, does not take kindly to its agents being interfered with. But Serena's office, in particular, took the civil rights violation with the gravity it deserved. It was no longer just Marcus and Serena's complaint. It was the United States government versus Global Wing Airlines. The fate of Karen Miller. Karen was fired within 24 hours. Fired for cause was the official terminology, for gross misconduct and violation of the contract of carriage. But it didn't end there. Because she had lied to a federal agent by claiming they were a threat and had been flagged by security, she was subject to a federal investigation. The video footage from the gate cameras was crystal clear. It showed Marcus and Serena standing calmly. It showed Karen's aggressive, dismissive body language. It showed her calling Todd on the jet bridge phone. Chloe's testimony was the nail in the coffin. Karen Miller, after her 20-year career, was not only fired but was blacklisted. The do not rehire note on her file was permanent and shared across all major carriers. Her hard karma was a complete and total expulsion from the industry she had built her life around. The last anyone heard, she was working as a cashier at a Home Depot in a Chicago suburb, her gate agent authority replaced by the question, cash or credit. The fate of Todd Donovan. Todd was also fired for cause. His lie about Serena's bag and his fear of her aggression was proven false by the testimony of 3 other passengers who were on the jet bridge. They all stated that Serena had been questioning, not aggressive, and that Todd had been smug and dismissive. As a younger employee, he tried to fight it, claiming he was pressured by Karen. But the conspiracy to find a problem was enough. He too was blacklisted. His dream of flying international routes as a lead purser was gone. He ended up losing his apartment in Chicago and had to move back in with his parents in Indiana. The fate of Captain John McGregor. This was the most severe and the most just of the punishments. Captain McGregor was, as Marcus had initiated, put under an immediate license review. The FAA panel was merciless. They played the jet bridge audio. They read the witness statements. They asked him one simple, repeating question. At what point did you, as pilot in command, make an independent assessment of a safety threat? He had no answer. His only defense was, I trusted my crew. The panel's lead investigator, a veteran pilot himself, looked at McGregor with pure contempt. You didn't trust your crew, Captain. You abandoned your post. You abandoned your command responsibility. You let a gate agent and a flight attendant hijack your authority to settle a personal vendetta. You didn't protect your flight. You protected your crew's ego. You are a liability. Captain John McGregor's airline transport pilot license was suspended for 6 months. For a senior captain, this was a career-ending judgment. He would have to be retrained, recertified, and pass psychological evaluations. But no airline would ever trust him with a wide-body jet again. He had broken the one sacred rule. The captain is always responsible. His hard karma was a forced, humiliating early retirement. He lost his prestigious job, his massive salary, and the respect of his peers. He had been a king in the sky, and with 3 arrogant words, "You're off this flight," he had turned himself into a pariah. The fate of Global Wing Airlines. This was the multi-million-dollar consequence. The FAA, led by Serena's office, fined Global Wing Airlines $2.7 million. There were 2 parts to the fine. 1. $1.2 million for the discriminatory act of denying boarding based on a race, a severe violation of the Air Carrier Access Act. 2. $1.5 million for the 49 U.S. Code, paragraph 42127 violation, interference with a member of the flight crew, and interference with a government agent. The FAA argued that the crew had interfered with their own agents. The story, of course, leaked. The passenger videos from the terminal freeze went viral. FAA agents banned from flight was a headline on every major news network. Global Wing's stock dropped 8% in 2 days, wiping out over $150 million in market value. The CEO had to make a public, humiliating apology, not just to Marcus and Serena, but to the nation. And as part of their settlement with the FAA, Global Wing was forced to implement a mandatory, company-wide civil rights and de-escalation training program designed and overseen by Special Agent Serena Thorne. 1 week later, the Miami sun was hot, and the water was a perfect, crystalline blue. Marcus Thorne lay back on a beach chair, a novel resting on his chest. Serena, in a wide-brimmed hat, was sipping a cold drink and looking out at the ocean. Their vacation had been delayed by a day, but they had made it. Their phones had been ringing for a week. News outlets, colleagues, even lawyers looking to launch a class action suit. They ignored them all. "It says here," Serena said, reading an article on her phone, "that Global Wing's CEO has personally apologized to us and vows to make this a teaching moment." A $2.7 million teaching moment, Marcus chuckled, not opening his eyes. "And Chloe Jenkins," Serena continued, a real smile in her voice, was promoted. David Chen made her the lead gate supervisor for the C-Con course. He cited her integrity and commitment to passenger safety. "Good," Marcus said. "That's good." A shadow fell over them. They both looked up. A man in a hotel uniform was standing there, looking nervous. "Mr. and Mrs. Thorne? I'm the resort manager. We just wanted to say, your entire stay is on us. The owner of the hotel chain saw what happened to you on the news. He said, 'Folks like that don't pay here.'" Serena and Marcus looked at each other. Marcus sighed and sat up. "Sir, we appreciate that. We really do. But we're here to be normal people. We're happy to pay." "Please," the manager insisted. "It would be an honor. Please, just enjoy your vacation. You've earned it." The manager bowed slightly and walked away. Serena looked at Marcus. "Well, that's new." Marcus smiled, a genuine, relaxed smile. "It seems karma isn't all bad." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the waves. The airport, the humiliation, the fight. It all felt a million miles away. They had faced a storm of prejudice and power-tripping, a storm that hundreds of other passengers had probably faced from Karen Miller and her colleagues and had been forced to endure. But this time, the storm had run into a mountain. The hard karma had hit, not with a bang, but with the cold, precise, and unstoppable weight of the law. For Marcus and Serena, their work was their life. But for this 1 week, their life was their own. The badges were put away, but the justice they had served was a silent, satisfying presence, as warm and clear as the Miami sun. What happened to Marcus and Serena was a 1 in a million chance. They had the power to fight back. But the real story is about the hundreds of people every day who don't have an FAA badge in their pocket. They're the ones who are told their bag is too big, or their shirt is inappropriate, or their tone is aggressive. They're the ones who are forced to endure the humiliation, miss their flights, and have their lives disrupted by a gate agent or a flight attendant on a power trip. The story of Karen Miller and Captain McGregor is a harsh reminder that power, especially in the service industry, is a responsibility, not a weapon. And when that power is abused, the karma can be devastating. The system only worked because the system was the one being abused. What do you think? Have you ever seen a gate agent or crew member on a power trip? Have you ever been the one singled out? Let me know your own stories in the comments below. This kind of behavior only stops when we all call it out. Thank you for watching. If you found this story of justice satisfying, please hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to see it, and be sure to subscribe for more true life stories of karma and consequences. We'll see you in the next one.